Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and what an incredible story this is. We're hearing two sides of a story, the husband speaking about his wife, and the wife speaking about her husband. And we know that she goes missing on a sequestered country road on a cliff face. So we're going to find out what's going to happen here. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell and the thumbs up. Tell me, Mrs. Butler, do you think if you were to communicate a little better with your husband Hamish, tell him everything you've told me, including how you know about his vasectomy, said the woman in green, that maybe you could get past all of this? Or do you think that that is an impossible feat to overcome? Are you kidding me? I say defiantly. How can I ever get past this? Number one, my husband lied to me when we first got married, and that's a big deal. He pretended he wanted children so that I would agree to spend the rest of my life with him. Number two, he made me believe that there was something intrinsically wrong with me when I failed to fall pregnant. And you have no idea how many times I brought pregnancy tests and how many times my hopes were dashed and defeated. I'd sometimes cry myself to sleep every night. I was that distressed. And did my husband care a jot? Absolutely not. Number three, I find out that he had a vasectomy without my knowing. So that means the trust literally fell apart in our marriage. The moment I was privy to this information, I'd had enough, let me tell you. Well, in my experience, Mrs. Butler, secrets do have a nasty habit of coming out, says the woman in green. That's my experience anyway. And secrets very often destroy marriages. That's why it's always important to be an open book with your spouse. Well, my husband's secret has certainly destroyed my marriage. How could I possibly spend the rest of my life with someone as treacherously dishonest and deceitful as he is? When I first married him, it was on the understanding we would have children together. He broke that promise by lying to me deliberately. The man has never allowed me to even own a dog of my own, and I guess I've allowed him to dictate how things pan out in our household. I should never have allowed that to happen. I'm going to stand up for myself from now on. I've allowed that man to bully me for long enough. There's nothing remotely redeeming about my husband. And no, I can't get past this. And more to the point, I won't. I don't like my husband. He has no sense of humour. He's incredibly boring. And he can't be trusted. Isn't that enough to prove to you that we would never work out long term? But, Mrs. Butler, you were saying your husband was extremely good looking. I think wildly attractive was the words you were using. And from what you said, physical appearances appear to be very important to you. I stare at the woman in the green with wide, indignant, almost disbelieving eyes. Good looking? I scoff. Sure, he's good looking, and he knows it too. But in my eyes, he's the most unattractive man I've ever met. Beauty comes from within, you know, Mrs. Wallace. Oh, I believe that, Mrs. Butler. Beauty does come from within. So tell me, what do you intend to do? In this session, you've been telling me everything that is wrong with your husband. Can you tell me anything that is right about him? Beyond the fact that he's wildly good-looking, of course. I'm silent for a long time, as I ponder over this question, and then I look directly at the woman in green and say, No, there's nothing I like about my husband, not a single thing. So then what are you going to do about it? I open up my purse and get to my wallet, and I pull out the attorney's card from the wallet and throw it towards the woman in green. That's what I'm going to do, I say. The woman in green picks my card up and studies it. Who is Rhoris Mecker? She asks me, raising a quizzical brow. But I'm sure she can see by the attorney's card that Rhoris Mecker is an attorney. He's my attorney. I visited his offices before. They're not far from where I work at the antique shop in town. He's a very nice man, you know. He specialises in divorce. He doesn't come cheap. So yes, I've decided I'm going to divorce my husband. That's what I'm going to do." "You sound very decisive, Mrs. Butler, as if you really do know your mind, which is a great change. But are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes, I'm absolutely sure. In our conversation together today, it's really opened my eyes. There is no possible way I can continue my relationship with my husband. We simply cannot go on." "Well, good for you, then. I think my sessions have obviously helped you find out what it is you really want, Mrs. Butler. I wish you all the best for the future," says the woman in green. "And if you ever need to talk to me again or discuss anything else that is bothering you, don't hesitate to contact my offices and arrange a further appointment." When I left Terry Wallace's office, I was practically floating on air. These sessions had helped me unequivocally to find out what it was I really wanted with my life. And although I knew I wanted a divorce from my husband, Hamish, the difference was I was now presented with no wavering doubts. This is what I really wanted to do. But I certainly doubted my husband Hamish would want any of this, despite the indifference we had towards each other. My husband would not take kindly to being brushed aside like this, or presented with divorce papers for that matter. I hurriedly crossed the street to make my way to my red Peugeot that was parked on the opposite side. I could see the man with the dark beard again. He looked distinctly like a Jewish rabbi. He appeared to look at me very furtively, through dark eyes. And when I looked straight at him as if to say, "What the hell is your problem?" he hurriedly looked away. Not him again, I thought, feeling ever so slightly indignant. If I wasn't mistaken, he seemed to be following me around for quite a few days now. I turned around to look directly in his direction again, and thankfully he had scuttled away like a dung beetle. But everywhere I appeared to go, I always seemed to be seeing this man, in my peripheral vision. Was he some kind of weirdo that had developed a fixation on me, like those stalkers you hear about that follow celebrities around? Please God, no, I thought. The last thing I wanted on God's earth was a stalker, thank you very much, or a wacko man who had developed a crush on me. I shook away the unpleasant thoughts from my mind, like the hairs on a dog's coat. Once I made my way back to the antique store. There was my boss, Travis Mason, standing behind the counter. At the time he was sifting through a box of antique treasures that an old lady had brought into the store after her sister had died, and some of the rare relics were worth a bob or two. "You're back early," my boss said, looking up at me. "How did your session with Terry Wallace go?" I sighed happily. It was my last session today. I didn't even know it. But she told me I can contact her any time I want to in the future. But my decision has been reached. "Your decision has been reached?" said Travis, looking at me in surprise. "Good Lord, are you sure? Does that mean what I think it means?" "If you mean, does it mean that I'm going to try and amend my relationship with Hamish, the answer is absolutely no. I'm going to be filing for divorce." "I'm very sorry to hear that," said Travis, looking melancholic. "I really did hope you could figure things out." "Travis, you can't save the world," I teased. "You might be able to fix your daughter's marriage, but you can't fix mine that easily. Me and Hamish, well, we're not really suited to each other at the end of the day." "I'm sorry to hear that, love," said Travis, giving me a big, genuinely warm hug. "But you're going to be all right, aren't you? You do look as if a weight has been lifted off your shoulders, I have to admit." "Thanks for asking. I'm going to be absolutely fine. And it's a good way to put it. I do actually feel as if a weight has been lifted off my mind. I've been to see my attorney several times, to discuss divorce with him. But I put that on hold. But now I definitely want to go through with it. But thanks to you, I had my hand on the pause button for a while, and I don't regret that for a second. I'm grateful you encouraged me to see the woman in green, because let's just say she helped me see my way clearly, through the fog, and so now I'm switching that button on and going ahead with the divorce, because I know unequivocally it's the right thing for me to do." "So how are you going to broach the subject with Hamish as tactfully as you can? I can see he's quite an egotistical man, and I'm not very sure he's going to take the news well. Whatever you may feel about your husband, he is definitely fixated about you."
"You never told me that before. You think he's fixated about me, do you?"
"Well, it's not something I've ever cared to discuss with you. But he's always struck me as the kind of man who thinks he owns you, like he owns a house and a fancy car. I can't imagine he's going to take the news well. When are you going to tell him?"
"Well, I'm working late tonight, aren't I? But when I get back home, I'm going to tell him then. Wish me luck. I'm really going to need it. I'm terrified to tell him my real feelings on our relationship. But I've got to do it. I've got to pluck up the courage and face him."
"Of course you can do it, but rather you than me," said Travis.
I was working late at the antique shop that evening. Travis Mason had long since gone home, although he'd begged me to allow him to stay, because he felt I needed his support and comfort, but I insisted he returned home to his wife and family. I worked late every Thursday night, when our doors closed at 8 p.m. But I was lingering around longer than usual, procrastinating and finding all kinds of other things that needed to be done. I really didn't want to return home to tell my husband I wanted out of our marriage. Eventually I knew I couldn't postpone the inevitable, so I found myself travelling down the country roads that would finally lead to my home. At one point I was very nervously driving up the steep mountainous incline, where a treacherously high cliff fringed the edges of this ribbon of road. So this drive at night was very dangerous and precariously terrifying, to say the very least. The high mountainous cliff dipped down to a sizable drop, to a thick valley below, completely overgrown with burgeoning forests and waterfalls that seemed to stretch out for an eternity. Everyone knew that this was the most dangerous stretch of sequestered country road, and most would wisely avoid it if they could, but I didn't have a choice in the matter. My husband had never liked me taking this road at night, as the visibility was dramatically reduced. If that was not bad enough, people had fallen over the cliff to their deaths. Some people had come to this country road with that purpose in mind, for it was the perfect place to commit suicide. I was exceedingly nervous of heights, so when my car climbed up this high incline with its steep drop, I always tried to focus ahead of me, keeping my eyes pinned directly on the road ahead of me. If I dared to even stray and look towards the edge of the cliff, I would probably lose my nerve. It was quite dark that night. The wind was pretty bad, and there was a pronounced chill in the air. I was used to driving at night, down lonely country roads like this, but it always bothered me when I took the road up the cliff. But tonight the atmosphere was more tense than usual. I could have cut it with a knife. I knew, of course, the quintessential reason why I was feeling so on edge. It was perfectly natural. I was about to tell my husband I wanted a divorce, and I knew he wouldn't take the news terribly well. My cell phone rang, and I could observe on the caller ID that it was Hamish. Talk of the devil. Even though I was driving up the steep incline, I knew my husband was phoning me, and was wondering where the hell I was. He probably wouldn't be impressed that I was running so late, so I thought I'd better tell him I was nearly home.
"Hi, Hamish, is that you?" "Of course it's me, love. Why the hell are you running late, Cupcake? What is keeping you? You should have been home a half an hour ago."
"I'm sorry, Hamish. You know what it's like at the antique shop on a Thursday night. It was busy, let me tell you. And our last customer, well, she refused to leave, didn't she? All she could do was talk about her late aunt."
"You do realise, Cupcake, what day it is? Or have you forgotten? Don't tell me you've forgotten. You haven't, have you?"
"Forgotten what?" I said, my mind a jumble of what it is that I could possibly have forgotten.
"You mean you've forgotten the anniversary of when we first met at the dental surgery all those years ago? Today is the anniversary of that special day. So I've arranged a special dinner for you at home, and I don't want it getting cold."
"Sounds perfectly lovely. How thoughtful of you," I said. "I'll be back home soon. I'm on that cliff road."
"Drive carefully, love. That's one of a hell of a dangerous road, you know it is."
"Oh, my goodness, I don't believe it," I said, stopping the car at once.
"What is it, Cupcake?" came my husband's voice.
"There's a woman lying in the middle of the road. I think she's been badly hurt. She's not moving. Oh, my word, I've got to get out to help her."
"Don't do it, love, under any circumstances, you hear me? Don't you dare get out of the car. Come home at once. We'll call 911.
"I can't leave her like this. What kind of a human being would I be if I ignored the poor woman? I need to see if she's all right."
"I don't think that's wise, love. I really don't. That's a very dangerous stretch of road, and it's very windy tonight. Don't get out of your car. Come home at once."
I didn't listen to my husband. I gingerly climbed out of my red Peugeot. I hurriedly ran over to the woman in the middle of the road. My heart was galloping violently in my chest. I was absolutely terrified of what I might find. I'd never seen a dead body before a day in my life. But the woman with her head buried into the road didn't look like she was breathing to me. This was the worst place to find someone lying in the middle of the road. The road was on the edge of a steep cliff, and if I looked down towards the huge drop, I'd probably lose my nerve. "Get a grip, Carol," I told myself. "If this woman is still alive, she needs immediate help. And if she's dead, I'll have to call for help, as I couldn't possibly leave her like this." I left my engine running, and my headlights glared through the dark, foggy night, like large tiger's eyes. I could see the woman's blonde hair tumbling over the road in a flop of rather flat curls. She was wearing a flowery dress that looked strangely familiar. I was sure I had a dress like that somewhere, and a red windbreaker that looked distinctly like mine. I ran towards the woman and dropped onto my hands and knees as I earnestly leaned over the body. "Are you all right?" I asked, reaching out to grab a hand that was cold and hard and unmoving. The woman appeared white and drained of all colour, and almost as if she was plastic-looking, as her eyes just stared out into the night. And then I discovered, to my astonishment, that she was no more than a mannequin. She'd certainly had me fooled. Was this some kind of weird joke? Then there he was, stepping out into the middle of the road in front of me, caught up in the penetrating, cruel glaze of my headlights. It was my husband, Hamish. What on earth was he doing here? Were my first thoughts.
Oh, dear, Carol. I did warn you, did I not, that it wasn't safe to get out of your red Peugeot when you're on a cliff's edge, on a windy night such as this? I mean, anything could happen to you, couldn't it? You could be blown off the cliff's edge to your death, could you not?
Hamish, what the hell are you doing here? Did you put the mannequin in the middle of the road like this? Is this some kind of a macabre joke? Because if it is, I am not laughing. I don't find this remotely amusing. What kind of game are you playing?
Cupcake, you want to talk about games, do you? You're the one that has been playing games, not me. I've been having you followed, so I know all about what you've been getting up to behind my back.
You've been having me followed? By a guy that looks like a Jewish rabbi, is that right?
That's right, he looks just like a Jewish rabbi. He's a private investigator, and I've learnt that you're planning to file for divorce with me, and that you're seeing a fancy man behind my back.
The private investigator is lying to you in that case, because I'm not seeing anyone behind your back. I cried out indignantly, realizing how precarious my position was, for my husband looked like an untamed tiger that was so furious I wasn't sure what he was about to do, but I could guess. He lunged towards me. I let out a shrill, ear-piercing scream, and the next thing I knew, I went rolling down that cliff, and with a desperate hand, I managed to grab a rock that was jutting out of the cliff, and I held on to the thing for dear life, knowing that it would soon give way, my hand that is, because there was only so long I could hold on to this rock. I could see Hamish standing at the edge of the road, looking down on me. "Please help, Hamish!" I cried out. "Please help! I can't hold on to this rock for much longer. If I fall down the cliff, I'm going to die. Please help me, Hamish."
That's the whole idea, Cupcake. I think you better say your prayers, as no one will be here to rescue you.
My husband turned around and walked away, and then I heard an engine firing up, and finally driving away. I knew I couldn't last much longer, dangling from a rock like this, holding on to it for dear life. My fingers were already slipping. And when I looked down at the rocky incline, I was terrified, for I knew I was already dead. And then it happened. A massive blob of black, very ambiguous blob of black, hurled itself towards me. I let out a shrill scream, but I still held on to the rock. But I was lifted up into the air like magic, thrown over a pair of ponderous shoulders. And then whatever this thing was, it was running down a cliff face. I mean, who can do that? As if it was nothing. This was a precarious drop that would have killed people instantly, but not this thing, whatever it was. I could feel the rise and fall of this thing's very robust, gigantic chest, and I could smell the earthen scent of its long dark hair. What the hell was going on? What was happening to me? I had almost made peace with my imminent death, and now I had been abducted by a massive creature, covered with long flowing dark hair. It was all so surreal. I felt as if I was ensnared in a nightmare, of which I couldn't escape. But I knew that this was no nightmare. This was real. My husband had tried to kill me tonight, and if it wasn't for this big blob of black, I'd be dead by now. But was its intention towards me as insidious as my husband's had been? I closed my eyes as this thing, whatever it was, carried me down this treacherous stretch of rugged terrain. This thing, whatever it was as nimble as a mountain goat. Finally, with great relief, we were travelling on flatter, much safer ground, obviously through the woods, because I could feel the trees surrounding me on every side. That was when I had the courage to open my eyes. I could feel the wind whipping against me. It was cool in the woods, and so incredibly dark that I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face, as no moonlight filtered through the trees to subdue the tenebrific density of the night that seemed heavy and cloyingly impenetrable, like a very thick winter coat. But this thing, whatever it was that was carrying me, didn't appear to be intimidated by the lack of visibility. Perhaps it had night vision, I thought. I remember the creature put me down on the ground, in an open clearing, where the moonlight filtered through the trees. It was in that moment that I got a full view of this creature. I realized to my total astonishment that I was staring at a Bigfoot, and the next thing I knew, I was caught up in his gaze. I remember him saying to me in my head,
"Have no fear. I'm here to help."
And after that I felt as if I was drifting off into a deep sleep. I had a profound sense I was being carried somewhere. I heard a mumble of strange voices, talking in a peculiar language, but everything was so nebulously vague, so indefinite, like when you're coming around from a deep anaesthetic, and yet you still can't break through that veil of consciousness to reach a more aware state of mind, so to speak.
Hamikati, ha kilana, ha sakwashi.
It was all so incredibly ambiguous. I remember the feeling of being rocked, as if I was travelling over a great distance, in an unconscious state. And that was when the first light of the new morning appeared to break through. I found myself on the side of a road. I woke up feeling disorientated and confused, and then I saw the Bigfoot again. I remember he told me in my head not to fear, but I was too scared to look into his eyes again, lest I should fall fast asleep. But I heard the Bigfoot say to me, in a strange language that was translated into English,
"There are lots of cars that come down here. You will find help here."
I realized then that the Bigfoot had actually saved my life on the night my husband had tried to kill me. I turned around to thank him, but he had already glided away. 1 year later, Hamish.
A year had gone by, and there was no news as to what had happened to my wife Carol. Her red Peugeot was found abandoned on the cliff road, with the keys still in the ignition and the door wide open. That was the route she'd invariably take to get back home. The police were very sympathetic about my plight at first, and told me the cliff is extremely formidable, and only a very skilled athlete could get down that cliff on their own. Most would not survive such a drop. They asked me if my wife had been suicidal of late, and I told them on multiple occasions that she had talked of ending her life, but I'd never thought that she'd meant it. The officer in question had given me that "are you kidding" kind of look, as if he thought if my wife had mentioned that she wanted to commit suicide, as a dutiful husband, I should have taken her claims extremely seriously, for it meant she had reached a very low place in her life. Of course, on my part, that was rather an artful lie, in order to allay any suspicions being directed at me, for I certainly wasn't going to have the finger pointed at me for being the quintessential reason that Carol decided to end it all. I was glad that they were pursuing that misleading narrative, as I am told that the police always look to the husband as being the prime suspect in any kind of investigation where a death is involved, especially a close death. But they saw what had happened to my wife Carol, with her car abandoned like that, as either a dreadful, very unfortunate accident, or an attempt on my wife's part to take her own life. By all accounts, I'm definitely not going to admit to my part in all of this, especially as my wife deserved everything she got, although right now I don't know what that is, as her body was never recovered. I was the one that threw the red windbreaker the mannequin was wearing to the bottom of the cliff, as it had belonged to my wife, and is what she would have ultimately worn on a windy night. The police found the windbreaker, but they never found Carol's body, not even a shoe, that she could have been wearing. The police officer interviewing me about my wife reassured me that many a lost soul had jumped over that cliff to their death. He asked me if I could think of anything that might have pushed Carol over the edge to make her want to end her life like that. Did I know what the source of her great grief and depression was? And of course they asked me numerous questions about the state of our marriage. I told them exactly what I wanted them to know. I told them, like all marriages, we had our ups and downs, but on the whole we were extremely happy together. I told the officer that my wife wanted a baby very, very much, but sadly, no matter how hard we tried, she simply failed to get pregnant, and it didn't help that the biological clock was ticking. I told him that I guess she realized the time was running out, and that she'd never get to be a mother. I assured him that this had distressed her greatly, so much so that she'd cried herself to sleep almost every night. It's all she ever wanted, I told him. A baby, I mean. The officer looked very sympathetic. Well, I guess that might have pushed her over the edge. We did find her red windbreaker at the bottom of the cliff, but we found no sign of her, Mr. Butler, I'm afraid. I think it is safe to assume that your wife Carol is deceased. Maybe wild animals dragged her body away, for there are no remains to be found. The police contacted my wife's parents, who failed to contact me to express their condolences, which I felt was absolutely appalling, although I did get a funny note from my wife's mother, saying that there would be a memorial service for my wife, of which I would not be invited. Some of the locals who had heard about what had happened to my wife expressed their deepest sympathy towards me, which was jolly good of them. There is one thing, however, that keeps me awake at night and tortures me a lot. What if my wife Carol is still alive? Because her body was never recovered, and there have been cases of people who have managed to get down that cliff. I still am haunted by that night that I pushed her over the cliff edge to what I believed would be a certain death. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm a monster, aren't you? But despite everything you may believe, I still loved Carol very much. But she was the one that decided to ruin everything for us. We had such a great relationship, until she tried to turn on me like a rattlesnake. I miss her, of course I do, as without her there is a huge emptiness in my life. But I was not going to allow Carol to humiliate me, not under any circumstances, by filing for divorce. If she wanted rid of me, it works both ways, does it not? I knew that I had to get rid of her first, to save my dignity, which is what I did. I still remember Carol climbing out of her car on that tumultuous windy night, where it was blowing very vigorously, let me tell you. My wife was a very slim woman who could easily be blown over if she wasn't careful, and she was terrified of heights and not at all nimble. She told me that lonely cliff road she took every night up that mountainous steep incline scared her half to death. But I knew my Machiavellian plan would absolutely work, because if my wife saw anything lying seemingly wounded in the middle of the road, from an animal to a human being desperately in need of help, she'd have got out to help them, as she was always selfless that way. I'll never forget the way she looked at me when I stepped out into the middle of the road, and she realized my guileful plan had all been a set-up, and that there was no escape for her. It was so easy to just tip her over the edge, but when she fell, she grabbed onto a rock that was jutting out of the ground. She held on to that rock for dear life, but I knew she wouldn't be able to last very long. But I'm still so bothered by why her body was never recovered, and because of that, I sometimes toss and turn in my bed at night, and I'm regularly haunted by images of Carol. If I could have changed anything that night, I would have stood there on that cliff road, watching my wife lose her grip as she held on to that rock, and finally her fingers slipped, and she took the nasty fall to the valley below. Of course there have been people who've managed to climb down that cliff, but those are intrepid adventurers who know exactly what they're doing. But Carol, not Carol, she couldn't survive that steep drop, or could she?
Carol, after that treacherous night when Hamish tossed me over the cliff, as if I was no more than an old apple core he wanted to dispose of, I'll never forget how he so cruelly turned away, while I clung on to that rocky appendage that jutted out of the ground for dear life. But I knew I couldn't last very long. I knew I would lose my grip, and then I'd fall to my imminent death. My adrenaline had been coursing through my system so powerfully at the time that it gave me a supernatural strength I didn't even know I had. I looked up at my husband pleadingly, with terror in my eyes, begging him to please help me. But he insouciantly just turned around, and as I say, he walked away. How heartlessly cold do you have to be to do a thing like that? I guess my husband just couldn't handle the fact that I wanted to divorce him. So yes, he is obviously a narcissist. I remembered praying to God for help. I knew I was about to meet my maker, and I hadn't even started living yet. Moments after I prayed, a miracle happened. This Herculean, ambiguous blob of black that was not exactly discernible threw me onto his shoulders and glided down the cliff with the agility of a mountain goat. Looking back, I do wonder how anyone could possibly climb down that cliff, but the Bigfoot did, and how he did I don't exactly know, but a large part of me was so caught up in the bubble of my terror at the time. I guess I tuned out as to what was going on. I was sure in one way or another I was dead. I had no idea whether the thing rescuing me had an insidious agenda towards me, and at the time I didn't know what the hell it was. I could hear the thing breathing and occasionally grunting. And when I finally realized that this creature was a Bigfoot when he put me down, I was so astonished. I have not thought about cryptic creatures before. The very idea that they might exist in North America had never once entered my mind. But this powerful, extraordinary creature unquestionably was real. I think the Bigfoot hypnotized me, because most of my memory was a foggy blur, until I found myself on a road a long way from home, where there were several cars that passed that way. The Bigfoot was standing there, and he told me that I could wave down a car and get the help I needed. And before I had an opportunity to thank him for what he'd done for me, He had all but glided away, and that is something I deeply regret. I would have liked to thank him, because he saved my life. I do not know how he got to me in time, or what on earth he was doing on the cliff in the first place, but I'd rather not think about things like that. But I do know that God uses the most unlikely of angels to rescue us. For that night my prayers were well and truly answered. I know many people say negative things about Bigfoot, but this highly intelligent human-like creature saved my life, and without his marvellous intervention, I know I would be dead. I wisely never told anyone about the extraordinary Bigfoot that saved my life, not even my own parents, because there's some things you don't share. But let's just say, nobody understands how someone such as myself managed to survive a fall from a great height without being injured or without any broken bones. When they ask me to fill in the blanks about what really happened, my excuse is, I can't remember. And that isn't actually a lie, because there's so many things about that night that I genuinely don't remember. Ask anyone who's been in a near-fatal car accident, and you'll find many of the details of what happened that night or that day whenever the accident occurred, for them are ambiguously obscure, because our mind blanks out things we don't need to remember, probably for our own mental well-being, I rather suspect. I do remember I stood on the side of the road, waving down a passing car, and that good, kind Samaritan stopped and allowed me to use their cell phone. I called my sister who picked me up, and I told her and everyone close to me what had happened with my husband, and how he had tried to kill me that night. I told my parents, and of course my very good friend and employer, Mr. Travis Mason, so they all knew exactly what was going on. The first thing my mother said to me was, "I knew the man was a narcissist from the very moment I laid eyes on him. He needs to go to prison for what he's done. I hope they lock him up and throw away the key forever." Of course I wanted Hamish to be charged at once for attempted murder, but I had other plans in mind. I called the police and told them I was very much alive and well, a couple of days after my car was found abandoned on that cliff road. I told them I didn't want my husband to know about my whereabouts, or that I was actually alive, as he was abusive towards me. They asked me if I wanted to file any charges against him. I told them I needed time before I did that, but I would be laying charges when I was good and ready. I wanted my husband to be looking over his shoulder every single day of his life, wondering and worrying if his wife had survived that nasty fall. As some people have survived that drop, because they were nimble enough to navigate their way down to the bottom of the cliff. But such people, let me tell you, are few and far between, and are probably extremely good athletes. The police, after much persuasion, never updated my husband to tell him that I wasn't dead, while my parents informed him they were having a memorial service for me, but he was not invited.
Hamish, life has not been easy this past year. Wondering what happened to my late wife. I hate the not knowing. It really bugs me. If there was a body, there would at least be confirmation that she was dead, but her body was never recovered. When I go to bed at night, it is her face that haunts my deepest nightmares, and sometimes I even wake up in pools of sweat. I did contact the police a couple of times to ask them about the investigation, and I think they said something to me about it being closed, which was a huge relief to me. I figured out they assumed my wife had taken her own life, but with no body to bury, there can be no funeral, and the only memorial service Carol had was organised by her parents, who simply refused to invite me to the ceremony, claiming that their daughter had never been happy in her marriage to me, and they wanted nothing to do with me. I guess they blamed me for what happened, and believed I made their daughter so miserable that she chose to take her own life. I guess some people are thinking that, but I'm not going to let that get to me. Life is too short for any regrets. So what's the point of having any? Sometimes when I'm out on the street, doing my shopping in town, I will see someone that rather reminds me of Carol. I will draw in a deep breath and wonder, is it her? And then the woman in question turns around, and I'm heartily relieved to see that that is not Carol. I woke up this morning with a bitter taste in my mouth. It was as bitter as gall, I have to say, and a heavy feeling in my heart, an ominous feeling. I have an appointment with a client this morning called Mrs. Carmen Karma, who wants to see a house that I'm trying to sell. She's seen the house online and likes it very much, but she wants a personal viewing. So I'm on my way to meet with this woman, but something feels so off this morning, and the sour taste in my mouth refuses to abate. Why do I have a prognostic feeling today that it's not going to be a good one? I just don't know.
Carol, this is the day of my grand entrance, the day when I get revenge on Hamish. I've been to the police, and I've told them all the details concerning my near miss with death, as my husband attempted to murder me. But I told them I needed to have fun with him first, and thankfully they agreed. I've made an appointment to see him. I'm pretending to be a woman called Carmen Karma. The surname Karma, well, speaks volumes, doesn't it? As my arrival on the doorstep of this home will bring the karma that Hamish well deserves, for he is about to be arrested for attempted murder, as the police are in on this charade with me, and I'm grateful for their support. As I drive up to the house, I can see my husband's BMW parked outside the modern property. This is the kind of house that Hamish would have loved us to live in as a married couple. He could never understand my fascination for all things romantically antique. I'm wearing dark glasses and a dark wig, and I'm heavily pregnant because I've been artificially inseminated with another man's sperm. So my very extended stomach is practically bursting out of the maternity dress that I'm wearing. I'll be having a baby in due course, so my dreams in becoming a mother have finally been realized. I'm very doubtful that Hamish will see through my crafty disguise, until of course I pull off the black wig and remove my dark glasses, and then he's going to have the shock of his life, and I simply can't wait to see the horror on his face when he realizes the terrifying truth that his wife is alive and well, and that his dirty laundry is fully exposed. Hamish eagerly comes dashing down the formal steps of this modern home. He's wearing a bright smile on his face. I notice his eyes go straight to my extended pregnant belly, as it's the first thing people tend to look at these days when they see me. It's surreal to see my husband again, but I'm glad he doesn't appear to recognize me at all. My disguise is obviously very good. My husband hasn't changed at all. He's as good-looking as he always has been, but I do notice, rather pleasingly, some dark circles under his eyes. Maybe he's been having quite a few sleepless nights over the last year. Perhaps he's had nightmares of tossing me over the cliff to my death. Or maybe he's worried that I'm not dead at all. He's about to find out the terrifying truth, and I'm sure when he sees me in the flesh, he'll never sleep well ever again. Hamish is wearing an impeccable navy blue suit that fits him seamlessly like a glove, along with a crisp white cotton shirt and a very smart red and blue tie. I notice his leather shoes, as usual, are so shiny you can practically see your face in them.
Hello, Mrs. Karma. I'm Hamish Butler. Very delighted to finally meet you,
he says, reaching out to shake my hand. I take his hand in mine. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm so very glad you're going to show me around this property today.
I'm very delighted to do so, ma'am. I didn't actually know you were pregnant. When is the baby due?
Very shortly, I say. I'm in a hurry, of course, to find the perfect home.
But of course you must be. Let me show you around. You are going to be delighted. This place is perfect to raise a family.
Hamish, I say, removing my dark glasses from my face, and tossing the dark wig to one side so that it drops to my feet, so that a tumble of golden curls suddenly appears that I know he's going to recognize. He'll be in no doubt as to who I am. Hamish stares at me for a long moment. His eyes widen in absolute disbelief. He's looking at me as if he's seeing a ghost. His face has grown so white, and he's trembling like a leaf. I smile at him. Nice to see you, Hamish. It's been quite a while, has it not?
It's you, Carol. I thought you were.
You thought I was dead, didn't you? Too bad for you that I survived that steep drop. You underestimated what a nimble athlete I am. There are people that have made it down that cliff, you know. I'm not the first.
But I don't understand. How could you possibly survive that? It's not possible.
Why did you do it, Hamish? I ask him.
You were going to divorce me,
he says somewhat churlishly. I was going to divorce you because I didn't love you any more, Hamish. We weren't working out. And you know why? Because you lied to me about so many things. But about the most important thing to me in my entire life, and that was having a baby. And you went behind my back and had a vasectomy. That's why I wanted to end things with you. But you wanted me dead. You have heard the saying, karma's a bitch, Hamish. That's why you're meeting her today. I'm Mrs. Carmen Karma today. Hamish continues to look at me in disbelief.
My God! Oh, my God! I'm done for.
Too right you are. It's nice knowing you, Hamish. I guess meeting you in the dentist's office was a bad omen, wasn't it? The police cars arrive in a flash of blue lights, and I watch Hamish being cuffed and taken away. And I hope he'll spend a long time in prison. After my case is heard in court, of course. He intended to kill me with malice, so that should mean he'll spend many years staring at the white walls of his prison cell. I feel absolutely no pity for him, for he spared me not a moment of kindness when he threw me over that cliff. I suspect he really is a narcissist, like my mother believes. He looks at me in silence through his wide, indignant eyes that are devoid of any emotion or regret. The only regret that Hamish is likely to have is that he got caught in the first place. But it's no more than he deserves. He has read his Miranda rights and ushered away in a police car. I hope I never have to lay eyes on him again, but I'm glad he sweated like a pig, wondering if I was alive or dead for an entire year. But now he's going to prison, and I don't have to give him a second thought again. Right now my focus is on raising my baby girl. I've decided to call her Mary Bell, and Travis Mason has graciously agreed to be her godfather. My parents can't wait to be grandparents. And recently I've been seeing a lovely man who's a bit of a poetry buff, much more my type, as my mother keeps saying. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what a lovely story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.